Welcome to the Education and Empowerment Podcast. In this show, our hosts explore success and advancement through education by interviewing today's top leaders in the fields of education, business, and technology in order to provide insight into what it really takes to succeed. This show is brought to you by ForStay, a SaaS-enabled online booking marketplace for student and intern housing. ForStay provides turnkey, all-in-one, cloud-based accommodation software solutions for colleges, universities, and organizations. Learn more at offcampus.forstay.com and landlords.forstay.com. All right, let's get into the show.
The global pandemic has caused major disruptions to language learning and travel industry. The format and delivery of language and pathway programs have changed. Young people, their parents, student recruitment agents, and English language pathway providers have found it very difficult to navigate over the past 18 months. Thankfully, for leaders such as Christopher Mediratta, tackling this challenge is a new mission that he's on to. Christopher is President and Chief Operating Officer at ILSC Education Group, and in this role, he's responsible for daily operations of ILSC Language Schools, Greystone College locations, and language testing operations in Australia, Canada, India, and United States. Christopher is an experienced senior executive in higher education sector, having held roles at multiple vocational colleges and schools in Canada and United States. Christopher is also a board member of Languages Canada, Canada's National Education Association, representing more than 200 accredited language education programs across the country. Prior to starting his career in higher education, Chris was a vice president at EY, at the Transaction Advisory Services Group. In this role, he assisted his clients to preserve value and restructure successfully by advising and working with them to implement strategic business plan reviews, acquisitions, divestitures, and restructuring plans. Christopher Mediratta graduated from Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada, and holds Chartered Professional Accountant, CPA, Chartered Insolvency and Restructuring Professional, CIRP, and Licensed Insolvency Trustee, LIT designations. In this episode, Christopher Mediratta will share lessons that he learned navigating through a global crisis, leading not only three most reputable institutions in Canada, such as Languages Canada, ILSC Education Group, and Greystone College. Christopher Mediratta will enlighten the podcast listeners about the new trends and opportunities that leaders and other language learning and pathway providers can use to scale their operations, programs, and institutions. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome to Education and Empowerment Podcast. This is your host, Bakhtiyor Isoev. And this morning, I'm thrilled to welcome Christopher Mediratta. Christopher Mediratta is someone I really personally admire very much, and I'm so excited to bring you to our podcast to learn more about the work that you do. And as a tradition, I'd like to get us started by asking a question. Tell us how you end up in higher education and language learning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. Very excited to be here. I think I started out as an accountant in Ernst & Young in Ottawa, Canada. And I had an opportunity in my career at EY to really be part of some really interesting teams and I had some secondments that were international. And I think getting involved in large global files and being able to see what it was like to really travel to a different location and be part of a different community. I always loved travel and I enjoyed that in work. In addition, when I was at EY, I had an opportunity to volunteer with the Canadian Association of Insolvency and Restructuring Professionals. In there, I was teaching young professionals on how to pass competency-based exams. And then I started writing exam questions and I really got involved in the education component. And I had an opportunity that came across my desk in 2014 to join a Canadian college group, Trillium College. And they appreciated my skill set. I saw a great opportunity to join a college who was relatively large, had quite a few locations in Canada and the US. And they appreciated my skill sets. And I saw a great opportunity and a great ownership group. So I joined them. From there, I had an opportunity to move to a US college group in Kentucky. It was a nursing business school, and I was chief executive officer there. And I think that was it was great people, and I learned a lot and was continuing to work on my executive presence and experience what it was like to be the boss and everything that offered, and the challenges that came through that, including accreditation and going through different cycles. And I had an opportunity to meet Paul Schroeder at ILSC, and he was looking for somebody to, at the time, was chief operating officer and help with our global schools in Australia, Canada, and India. And I think that joining ILSC and Greystone College with its focus on international students felt like a great move, and it was a great partnership with Paul and the entire ILSC team. And I'm still passionate about education and really excited about the opportunities for international immersive language travel and language work opportunities.
That's amazing. Congratulations. See, that's why I like talking to people like yourself. That's certainly great. One of the things that, there's a lot of discussion right now around, the whole notion of pandemic and whether or not, we are still experiencing it, or, can we call it pre-pandemic and post-pandemic? And, there's a group of people who like to refer to this as, a new change and adjusting to the new change. Where would you, kind of relate yourself and your, leadership perspective is? Are we still in the pandemic, or, how would you describe, what we faced about, roughly 22 months ago, starting in March 2020?
Oh, so I think first, since I started in the college group and then had joined ILSC Education Group in 2017, and they focus more on, or we focus more on, international students looking for that immersion experience. So whether that's language travel, whether that's study and work through co-ops and colleges, and really bringing diverse international groups into the classroom. And I think then as we roll into the pandemic, how do we recreate that immersion experience online? And how do we serve the students who were coming to Canada, coming to Australia, to really experience that? They're more than to learn language or more than to get the traditional college. They're really looking for a cultural and business immersion in the country. So the pandemic has certainly brought many challenges. I think if we look at it today, we take a lot of heart in the resilience of our student. They early 20s and a little younger in the summer, but they want to travel. Their plans to come to Canada or Australia, or their plans to continue on to higher education, or for some immigration, that hasn't changed. In fact, what's happened is over the last number of years, the fact they couldn't has created what we hope is a bit of a wave, or a bit of build in demand. And as borders open and as flights become more available, and more importantly, as vaccines allow for safe travel, I think the reality is we're going to have to live with COVID in some form, and we've seen that. But students want to travel, students want to join our classroom. So we're very optimistic for the next number of years, and we take a lot of really important lessons over the last couple of years with us as we move forward.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I know that you are also, chairing, Languages Canada. So you understand that there is, so much, not just, only on the premises of, some of the education, group, the ILSC Education Group, or, the Greystone College, but also, what's going on in the industry level, like what other thought leaders are considering. What would you say are maybe, 2 to 3 biggest takeaways that are being discussed as maybe like building stones to shape the future of this industry?
Thank you. I'm a board member of Languages Canada, and really happy with what that organization's done. Their executive director and the whole team really we've noticed different organizations, whether it be English Australia, Languages Canada, that advocacy work and getting a seat at the table to be involved with government stakeholders as decisions are made. I think that that level of trust has been developed. And certainly we see that with Languages Canada, with talking to different provincial ministries or talking to the federal government. And that understanding and appreciation of what the industry brings and the reliance and the value that international students bring to the Canadian or Australian or UK economies as they spend money on accommodation, they spend money on meals. They're really adding a tremendous value to a number of different streams, even more so than tourism because of their longer term stay. And I think those partnerships and advocacy in the face of challenges, I think is really what we want to bring forward. And we've seen so many different organizations be really successful, including Languages Canada as being part of that. So I think that's one. I think the other thing is really sharing of best practices and sharing of ideas. I think we've clearly learned that we need to be resilient in really challenging and a difficult environment. And some of that means having good thought leadership and having different organizations who may compete with students, and we challenge each other on a day-to-day basis, but we need to come together either under the different national accreditation bodies or as industry leaders, bringing thought leadership and acting in a prudent, safe manner and acting consistently. And I think that that's also what we've seen. So it's really the advocacy and the thought leadership that's been brought in. We've seen that happen across a number of different organizations.
Yeah, that's certainly very true. One of the exciting conversations I've recently had, with a leader who was a very strong believer that online education or the online learning was not a replacement, whereas the numbers, obviously, he shared, the numbers were great, but, he was more a bigger advocate of experiential learning. I mean, the way he described this was, you can, even if it's going to be like virtual reality, you can bring the same experience of coming and meeting like a host family or meeting new friends or living in a situation where you are challenged. So would you consider that with the pandemic, the whole model, would you consider it being a replacement, or would you consider it being more of a enhancement of the traditional face-to-face learning?
I guess it's both. I mean, you clearly see some online applications or web-based language that aren't immersive, and there's a place for them within the global language training and learning industry. But for us in language travel and immersion, the first thing is for the students to experience cultural immersion in a classroom in a different country with a broad nationality mix, where for us, the common language is English or French, is one of the best ways to truly learn language. What we've seen is there is absolutely a place for online learning to be accretive to that experience. So whether that's allowing students to access their services remotely, ILSC is proud to have student apps where students can make requests without having to queue up in a campus or go visit. They can reach into their pocket and onto their phone and request class changes or request a vacation. And I think that those type of online services that make it a more student-centered experience is really where I think we can add a lot of value. From a class perspective, I think having some asynchronous learning to reinforce what's being taught in the classroom, to allow them to practice at home or to access their teacher potentially in a different way. So whether we're using Teams, for example, in our classroom, and there's now a group chat established, those are ways that we really didn't leverage pre-pandemic, and we're only starting to, but we're seeing those benefits now as we've returned to in-class delivery in all our schools around the world, that, there are some really good ways that we can use technology.
That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. And it reminds me of actually, learning from the best, right? It's what happens, and it's that experience that, really matter. And it's a great segue to, for our podcast listeners to learn, a little bit more about the work that you do with, IELTS, Education Group and Language Schools, as well as, Greystone College. Can you tell us a little bit more about the founding story and how it all started, and, what made you guys so successful?
We have an amazing founder, now our Chief Inspiration Officer, Paul Ziesman, who founded ILSC Language Schools in 1991 in Vancouver, and was really about that experiential learning and co-developed content with the teachers. So we're proud to be celebrating 30 years. And I think current Chief Executive Paul Schroeder joined in around 2000, opening Toronto and then starting to open Montreal and other schools. We've really grown organically to now have 8 schools around the world, 4 in Australia, 3 in Canada, and 1 in India, each time responding to market growth. And started out as a language school, and Greystone College was added over 15 years ago. Started more in teacher training, and now we're proud to offer a suite of business, hospitality, digital marketing programs, and in Australia, different levels of certifications, advanced diplomas, and diplomas, giving students many different options to pursue their studies. And a lot of those are articulating on to public colleges and universities in Canada and Australia. So really offering students a great array of options to choose the journey that suits them, to choose the travel, immersion, or work journey that they can combine with great study options.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, this growth, market obviously is changing. Like, give you an example of, what we are experiencing at Forstay. We've had, a student have a choice of at least, 6 to 10 different options, for the accommodation, whereas, one option of accommodation being viewed by at least 10 to 15 people. So the market has changed. There's a lot of, great changes that's coming. And I know that, your institutions have been, responding to these changes, very quickly. And, we're proud to be, partners, with your institutions as well. I'm looking at this as from the perspective of, now is great, right? This pandemic happened, this Deltacron and Omicron and you name it. I call them transformers. I have a feeling that they will continue. I have a feeling that, the world is going to continue to learn new ways of adapting to this. So I was hoping that we could dive into, maybe the next, 1 to 2, 3, maybe, up to 5 years, and get on a plane and from a, very bird eye view perspective. Could you tell us, where we had it? Can you tell us like where the future of those, language learning students and scholars are, and how it's all changing? And, what are you as a leader planning to do there?
I'm going to say that the experience starts well before the student jumps on the plane. So that's making sure that we have great websites and digital brochures or other ways to reach the student as they're making that decision. And then as the student's contemplating language and they may be going on to higher education and need to start with us in our university pathways to help them move seamlessly to partners. That means doing really online language assessments and comprehensive language assessments. And we talked about technology earlier. We continue to evolve our online language assessment tools to provide that comprehensive assessment that isn't multiple choice, or not like it's a productive skill analysis, including listening and speaking, that's recorded and assessed to give the student confidence that they know where they are, and that helps them plan to achieve their goal. And then working with our agents who will help the students with visa, travel, and other plans as they prepare to embark on that journey. Then just before they go, they see their accommodations. They know exactly where they're going to stay. They can see their class schedule. They can see what courses are going to be available in the campus. We want that excitement building well before the student starts on the plane. And I think from an online learning perspective, we also see some students say, look, it is expensive to travel and do the immersion, but maybe I want to do some courses online from home country while I'm working part-time, getting ready. And I think we continue to see that's an opportunity for online learning where we're getting them used to the classroom, getting them used to how they're going to learn and seeing some of their classmates before they actually get on the plane. So we want that plane to be, I'm so excited to be coming to Canada or Australia or India to go do my immersion experience. And then I think we have a full vaccination policy in the schools to make sure that we don't have to worry about the next cron as students can start with confidence knowing the schools are going to be safe. I think the reality is that if there happens to be an outbreak or something happens in the future, we can much more seamlessly and pinpoint pull a class or pull a school quickly online to protect and make sure that students and staff are safe, that they can continue learning. And then the moment it's safe to come back in the school, get them back on their immersion experience that they planned for. So I think what we're seeing this year as we see our student numbers really start to grow back as we've been really fortunate in Canada that they've kept open borders for international students for coming up a year and a half now. And Fortress Australia is now opening to international students. So there's this energy coming back in the school. ILSC and Greystone College, we've been delivering classes and we stayed open in all of our locations, bring immersive experiences, and to the extent allowed by local realities, we were delivering face-to-face classes in all of our schools, and that is helping us regrow and grow with confidence. So I think what we see for 2022 and 2023 is a regrowth of our numbers, hopefully opening in new destinations, and it really feels exciting. And we're taking the best practices that we developed during the pandemic, those online apps, students can make appointments, really working on a creative online experience that adds to their immersion. Fantastic. So I think that's what we see.
That's great. That's great. I'm very inspired. You actually made me so excited. I'm envisioning myself on an airplane and like when the airplane comes and starts to have the turbulence and there's like, clouds and stuff, and this pilots are, and the board crew are, I guess, the teachers and the educators and academic stuff and student support and, leaders such as yourself navigating that plan and getting us into the right direction. That is very inspiring, Christopher. And I was hoping, you could share, words of wisdom or maybe pinpoint to some of the areas of, opportunity for those pilots, so to speak, to, other leaders such as yourself, who may be in Australia, UK or the States, or, even in Canada. What can they start doing now to prepare for the journey that you described?
I think for all schools, unfortunately, during the pandemic, there were some schools who shut down. I think for those that, like us, who continued to operate, I think that will put us in good state. For those that are coming back from hibernation, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to rehire staff and rebuild teams, but there is clearly demand there for those services. I think we know we need to offer great, fantastic, inspirational student experience. And in order to do that, we need to offer great experience to our staff and our faculty and our teams. So absolutely. I think we're really excited and proud to be hiring again and looking for those team members with a can-do student service attitude. And I think that will also help us look after the students when they choose to come to ILSC and Greystone College, or any number of language travel organizations in the big immersive markets, I think, for English travel anyway. And language travel, I think, is so important for business and that cultural familiarity that I think it's going to continue to be a really dynamic industry in the coming years. Students, though, they're going to want more. It's not just about language travel or not just about language, it's language plus. Right. They want language plus great accommodations, plus a great experience, great activities, and a great class experience, which is fair. And we're excited to look for opportunities and partners to be able to provide that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I've been, pondering more about this, language plus. Can you, for a brief second, maybe give a couple more examples of that? Like as we kind of starting to wrap this, episode up, I think it's the biggest takeaway that probably, many of our podcast listeners can think about.
So I think I'll start with in Australia,
Mhm.
full-time language students are able to work 20 hours a week. So that means they're in class learning proper grammar, proper foundation, or they're learning about global social issues with an English grammar or English through yoga. But then they're going to a local cafe or a local restaurant where they're allowed to work. And then they're building on and expanding on the language learned in the class in the restaurant, in the cafe, in the shop. And right now, Australia is crying out for international students because they realize how much their economy needs them to keep growing and to keep working. And
Exactly.
I think that is language plus. And I think for us, then if you come into Canada, where language students aren't allowed to work, but Greystone College students are, or those continuing on to a university or a college partner, they're doing the same thing while they're in their academic portion. And then when they get into co-op, we're helping place them in companies where they're building on not just the language that they learned, but now the business skills or the hospitality skills or the digital marketing skills that they're learning in our classrooms. They're getting relevant business placements to really add to those skills. So we've known about the benefits of co-op for domestic students for a long time, but now an international student is going to go back to home country, if they're going back to Brazil or Japan or to Mexico or to Spain, and saying, yeah, not only did I study digital marketing at Greystone College, but I have a portfolio of what I did while I was in class, and look at the real business experience that I added to it. And I think that's the plus. It's accretive to what's happening in the classroom from your social setting. You may be in a forced day accommodation and meeting students as well from around the world, and that's adding to it because the common language will be English.
That's very, very insightful. I mean, this is certainly, an aha moment. I'm sure a lot of our podcast listeners will enjoy learning more. In fact, was there an event or, an industry or exhibition or, some sort of social gathering of like-minded people that you can pinpoint to our podcast listeners to check out?
There's some great opportunities offered from Languages Canada, or conferences coming up in March in Ottawa. English Australia does some great conferences. English UK does the same. ISEF puts on some great conferences where if you're interested in tapping into the international community, you can do that.
Amazing.
Same with Alto. So there are a lot of associations putting on and restarting some great conferences where you can meet, mingle, start building the business contacts and try and tap into this really dynamic international travel community.
That's amazing.
International language travel community.
That's certainly amazing. You keep me excited. I'm gonna make a note of all of these, and I'm gonna, actually go. I am so, tired being, working from home. I guess I need to get out and do more. I mean, I can't wait for more in-person activities to happen. This has certainly been a great conversation. I appreciate your valuable time. Is there any piece of advice, any wisdom, or any quote on education or empowering young people that you want to leave us with before you go?
So at ILSC and Greystone College, we firmly believe that we want to be career leaders in language, vocational, and higher education, and really deliver transformative learning and living experiences to our students, our faculty, and our staff that are choosing to study with us. And I think that is what the immersion or the language plus, it's all about transformational and immersive, inspirational experiences. And I'm really proud to be part of this industry. And I'm excited for the regrowth of it and the restart of it. I think we're really well positioned for a fun couple of years as the students start coming back, as our junior students start coming back in the summer, having short-term camp experiences. There is so many opportunities for those language plus experiences, those immersive experiences, which you won't get on a language app that doesn't offer it. So I think we welcome everybody back to come with us and come study with us and our other organization, other like-minded organizations. I think it's going to be a really fun 2022 and 2023.
I'm personally very much looking forward to that. Christopher, this is an exciting, very, very useful conversation. I deeply appreciate, your time, your insights, your stories are truly inspirational. Your knowledge of the industry and your leadership is certainly very profound and motivational. And, for our podcast listeners, please subscribe to our podcast to learn more from leaders like Christopher. You can check us out at podcast.forstay.com. So you can never miss an episode. And if you want to learn more about Forstay, check it out at about.forstay.com. And without further ado, Christopher, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a great day. I really appreciate it.
Likewise.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Education and Empowerment Podcast. This show is brought to you by Forstay, a SaaS-enabled online booking marketplace for student and intern housing. Forstay provides turnkey, all-in-one cloud-based accommodation software solutions for colleges, universities, and organizations. Learn more at offcampus.forstay.com and landlords.forstay.com.